Konami, welcome to my stream deck still isn't working right after the 5.3 update. Ha 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 ha. I'm gonna have to roll back to 5.2 because it won't even recognize the desktop audio source or mic source for muting and unmuting, so it's basically useless! So I have to remember to click things on and off manually with my own hands. And then at what point... what's the point in having the stream deck anymore? What's the point in having the stream deck anymore? I was supposed to be able to click a button and it'd do everything. And now I'm doing it like it's just... as if I didn't have a stream deck. So I need to roll back the stream deck program because 5.3 is fucking busted. It's fucking busted. And I paid too much money for this thing for it to not work. Frankly. How's everyone doing today? How do you like my art YouTube clickbait title? So eepy, I understand. The clickbait got me? Good. Good, it's doing its job. I was baited? Hell yeah. Needs more red arrows? You're so right. I need to have like the arrows are like, whoa! Oh, whoa! Oh shit, man! Oh shit! Oh, dude! And then like the like really perfect art that like everyone really likes, and you're like, don't do this, it's all wrong in the thumbnail. I do have that face in the thumbnail. I do have it. They're very much like, don't do this. This is all fucked up. And it's like renowned industry artists that people love. And it's like, this is the worst thing you can do. Don't make this mistake. Yeah, I didn't go full in on it, but you know, I did some. I had some of the clickbait. It's good enough. I did some of it, and we've got our podium today, DC. I thought you guys would appreciate knowing some of my sleeping arrangements more, because I've talked about the ways I'll wake up with Squirrel in my bed, and how I'll end up with like maybe 25% of the bed and she has all the rest of it. Well, another fun thing, right? You know, I have full-size bed. This is my pillow. This is where I am, curled up in a ball. And then like all this area is squirrel zone. And then I have another pillow, right? But on this pillow is my e-reader, my 3DS, my Switch. I just have like a dragon's hoard of in-bed entertainment. My phone. And then Squirrel is in one of these places. That's how I live. The other pillow is for my devices. Today I actually woke up more like this, and then Squirrel was here. She said, "This my spot." All the rest of the bed, and I'm like this, and she's here on top of my leg. She has all this space, but no, right here. Right there, right on top of me, where I'm like up against the wall. And then I also have a sweatshirt because kind of in here, so that if I put my phone up against the wall, I'm not afraid of it falling in between my bed and the wall somehow. Because that's a big fear I have. I'm always afraid of things falling in between. So I have a sweatshirt that I have in that space, pressed up against the wall to keep things from falling. Welcome to what my bed is like. Me, the dog, the devices. Yes, the safety sweatshirt. Although sometimes, like, the switch will be, like, over here, and I can feel, like, a joystick on my shoulder, and I'm like, ugh, get over there. Switches are big. Basically do the same thing in my twin size bed. I'm still near my pillow and my dog sleeps around me. That's how it is, man. You have to have your little dragon sport of devices. You gotta have your dragon sword of devices so that you can have things. You have options for what to do in bed before you sleep. Don't you people have nightstands? Okay, you wanna know what's on my nightstand? A half-empty bag of white chocolate matcha truffles. My House of Leaves book. And then my iPad Pro. And an old phone case. And it has Pokemon. That's what's on my nightstand. So what makes you think that I could fit my e-reader, my 3DS, and my Switch there too? And my phone. Glasses are just on the floor. No, my glasses are on my desk. That's where my glasses stay, is my desk. Although sometimes they'll be on the nightstand, because technically the stack is like a book, iPad, truffle bag, phone case, and then sometimes I put my glasses right here. Sometimes I put my glasses right there if I'm taking a nap. They have absolutely not discontinued iPads. Are you insane? And it's an iPad Pro. I need to get a new one. Mine's like the first generation iPad Pro, and it will no longer accept iOS updates. So it's basically become useless for drawing because programs require that you have certain iOS updates, and it will no longer take it. But it's like $1,000 for a new one, so I haven't gotten a new one. Haven't gotten a new one. Right, but we're not here for that. We're not here to discuss my Dragon's Hoard of devices. My Dragon's Hoard of devices. We're here to discuss art. And art styles. Yes, we're here to copy art styles the right way. The right way. So I have for you our first piece today. Our first piece today that we're going to examine. And something that I think is important. Did I save this small? Hold on. I know I've definitely looked at this in a larger size. I saved it small. 1 second. I know you're bigger. There we go. So, I know, like, usually people will be like, ah, yes, art. I like this style. And then that's about how far it goes. Right? Like, you're like, man, this is a really nice art style. And then it kind of just stops there. That's you? Yeah. Yeah. Let me guide you a little bit through my process. Whenever I see art styles that I really like, I will show you exactly what I do. So the first thing I do is I open it as big as I can, and then I really zoom in on it. I get up deep in the art, and I say, okay, what's going on here? What am I seeing? What is actually happening in this art, and can I decode what it is that makes me like this style so much? So the first thing I do is I start to actually like really get in here. I say, okay, yeah, we've got a lot of texture, right? We've got a lot of texture here. We've got brush strokes. We've got like these splattery bits. We've got like more of this brushstroke texture. We've got texture everywhere, right? You can see that the further you go through it. You can see texture, texture, texture. It's not completely smooth. So that's one of the first things that I see that I'm like, maybe that's what I really like about it, is the texture. Or I come through and I say, what about the rendering? What about that? What do I like about the way that it's rendered? Well, I can see that they have good shadow transitions in having the saturated color into the shadows here. I can see that for the most part, there's not a lot of volumetric shading, right? You can see that the face is basically one flat color beyond here in the blush and the nose. Otherwise, this is basically this color. And there's not really volumetric shading in order to show the shapes of the actual face. And that continues down into most of the hand is one shade. It's not really volumetric shading. Most of the arm here and here. And that continues on in most other places in the art. Like this dress doesn't really have volumetric shading either. But where we're seeing volumetric shading is the apple. We have some right here. We have some in the knuckles and the fingers, right? And then we have it in the hair. you have it in the hair, and that's where most of the volumetric shading is. Beyond that, it's pretty much all cast shadows. Or it's things to add more detail. Like the shading only exists to add more detail. Volumetric shading is when you are showing the shape of an object, right? So if you have a sphere, if you want to show that it's a sphere and show that it actually has volume and shape, you know, you shade it so that it's like, oh yeah, look, it's actually round. Meanwhile, cast shadow is what happens whenever you have an object that overlaps another and it blocks the light, and then it becomes a shadow cast onto it, right? So you'll see that there's not a lot of volumetric shading in this piece. We have it in places that it's required to show some more detail without actually adding lines. And then it's here like in this apple to show that it's really nice and shiny. But beyond that, it's very, very select areas that get volumetric shading. So we can mark that down in our rendering to be like, it's flat volumetric shading. But there's cast shadows. And then we move on. We say, okay, now we know what's going on with that. And then we look at the way that they actually render the shadows. There's more to it. There's, you know, the actual rendering of the shading of like, what do they use? Do they use a lot of cast shadows? Do they use ambient occlusion? Do they use volumetric shading? And then we go and we look at how they actually do the technicals of the shading. So we can see that we have pretty feathered shading here. Meanwhile, we have a really harsh line here, and we have it here with the texture. And in the face, we do have a little bit, but we have mostly in the nose, and then it's basically airbrushed on, and then we have this base color brought back in a sharper shape to show that the nose is there. And you'll see that in other places as well, that it's mostly these harsh lines in terms of the way that they shade. Like even here at the collarbone, it's a really hard line, and then they'll soften it with some of that textured brush. And you'll see that in other places too, like this is more harsh, but it has that textured shadow there. And we'll see this is the harsher shading, this is harsh. So it's actually pretty hard shadows in most places on the art. And you'll see like in places on the hair where normally you would have like pretty high specular highlights, it's much more low contrast in the highlights. And it gets really deep in the shadows. So we can see that this artist prefers shadows over highlights and uses those highlights just to add pops. And then they prefer to have hard edges on their shading. So we can add that as well to our list of things that we're seeing in the art. So this is all about learning how to actually observe art, right? Because there's a difference between looking at art and seeing it and actually observing the art. This isn't about whether or not it's executed well. It's not about your personal preference on it. There probably are going to be mic hits. It's just what's going to happen. It's not about anything of like whether or not it's correct. It is about you looking at something you like and tearing it down into its base elements, right? Because that's how you're going to learn what it is that you actually like from this style that you can take and apply to yours. Because you don't want to just look at it and try to copy it exactly. Because you're not going to learn from that. You're not actually going to grow as an artist from that in terms of especially developing your own art style. So we see that they have harsh edge on shadows. Ew. Highlight. So you just go through and you analyze everything. Like, I also can see that in the eyes here, there's very little shading on the actual white of the eye. And in fact, the white of the eye is darker than the skin tone, which is actually very interesting. And then they have this feathery sort of brighter saturated color around the iris. And that's another thing, is the color choices. And you say, is that what I'm liking about this art? Is it the color palette specifically that's making it something that I like looking at? And you can take the color as well. And if that's what you're like, okay, yes, I like these colors. I like to see that it's like more yellowed out and it's desaturated and it's lower contrast in some areas, but higher contrast in others, but it's still pretty low value difference for most of it, right? If that's what you end up liking, that's when you go in and you color pick. You say, okay, yes, I like this color. So you start making your own color palette out of what they have on here, and then you start looking at it and observing that. And you start just grabbing from everywhere and see what it is that you're actually looking at in terms of color without the context of the other colors. Because you'll see that whenever you look at these on their own, especially on a 50% gray, you'll start to see more of the true color itself. And then you can look at them and then look at your color picker and be like, okay, that's really gray actually. That's also gray. Like, this color here is more gray than you would think. Because in the context of the piece, that color looks blue. But it's more gray than it is blue. And then this one is probably one of the most saturated colors on here, this other blue. But most of them are very gray, very desaturated colors. But because of the way that they're placed in this piece in relation to each other, they look different. So that's another thing that you can study on its own, is the usage of color. But I just go through, and when I see something that I really like this, that's how I look at art. I start to really just dig deep into it and get as close to it as I can, so that I'm focusing on just what's happening, just what's being executed, rather than being blinded by like, man, that's really nice looking art. You want to get in here. You want to get in deep. You want to be like, oh yeah, look at this, the way that they shade the lips. That's so interesting. You can see that they actually have like a line, and then they shade it with black, and then it fades into this really airbrushed edge. And you can see here that it's really smudged out, and then it has this harsh edge again, terminating it. You can see that they use almost black for the nostrils, but then they come in with this color to highlight and create that shape. And you can see, like, in the eyebrows, it's mostly like an airbrush shape that they then come in and draw the hairs on. And once you get into this mindset of really breaking down the art, that's when you can start to pick out pieces of like, okay, I think that I would enjoy doing this in my art. I think that this is something that I would like to have in my art. And rather than drawing and copying exactly what you see in every facet of what's going on in it, that's how you start to copy art styles the right way. You're taking bits from each until you're creating your ideal style. Because if you copy an art style and piece exactly as you see it in every facet, it's still not going to be your ideal art style, and it's certainly not going to be your art style. It's just a copy. It is only whenever you break it down and you say, this specific part is what I like, that you can use that information to build on your art and your art style. So we get in there, we look real deep. We start to examine things on a technical standpoint. You can also look at things like the way that they do composition, if that's something that you notice, but that's not really like art style per se. That's just art knowledge. You get in deep. You really examine it. You look at every single detail on here. You say there's speckles here. There's like this dry brushing here. They airbrush this other color here, under here. This transition, like this diamond has this one patch of this here. Everything. Get in the paint. Get deep in it. And then you say, what do I like about it? What is it about this and all these things that I've observed that I really like about it? Did you apply this to doing hand-drawn art? Okay, well, firstly, digital art is not hand-drawn. The computer's not making the art. But this is something that has been done forever, for ages. It's, usually it's done with like painting masters, and they call it a master study. So your second step in this, after you really examine everything that's been done, you get in there, you get deep, you look at the way it's painted or drawn or whatever, and you really start to break down how this artist approaches things. You're trying to get into the head of the artist, right? That's whenever you take it and you do your study. You do your one-to-one copy as close as you can, or as close as you care to do it. And here's why. Here's why. You're going to do this once, maybe twice. But afterwards, you're not going to try to copy it exactly. You are doing your master study of this style next, which is pretty much what I was doing here. Right? You can see now, looking at these pieces side by side, what elements I was taking to learn from this style of really breaking it down. Why do I like this style so much? Isn't an exact copy like I'm saying that you can do for your next step? No. But that's because I'm more like, okay, this is what I like about this art, and so I'm going to use that piece and try it out and see if it's something that I actually want to incorporate into my art. But that's going to be your next step, is you actually sit there and you copy everything. And another thing that you can look at with art styles, especially, the anatomy. How does this artist stylize their anatomy? So you start to look at the proportions and basically just start to draw the building blocks on top of it to be like, okay, this is the way that they lay their proportions out, that sort of thing. Right? Because that can be a big part of why you like an art style, is the actual anatomy of the art. So that's your next step, is you do your master study on it. As obviously they're not going to be a painting master, but that's what we're going to call it. You're going to do your master study, and you're going to try and emulate it as best as you can. And as you're doing this process, you're going to find out what it is that you do and don't like about actually using that style whenever you're drawing. Because if you can't pick out what it is exactly that you specifically like about that style, even after you've gone through and you've broken it down to its base elements, you'll find out what you actually like using and what meshes with you. And then you start to just use those pieces of the style later. So you can start off doing like one-to-one. You can try to copy it exactly, like the exact piece as is, everything. And then you can start to break down, what did I not enjoy about that process? What did I enjoy about this process? What is it that I really liked working with? And what is it that I liked seeing as I was working with this style? And that's when you take that. You take that part and you say, this is mine now. And then you incorporate it into your style, right? So say I really like the way that they have very little volumetric shading. I really like the flat style with like the barely rendered shadows. That's whenever I take that and I move it into what I'm doing. I like the way that they terminate the shadows and that subsurface scattering with the more saturated line here at the edge. I like the way that the hand has more detail, but for the most part, there's no volumetric shading. There's no like overworking of the face. And that's when I take that and I say, okay, so I can get away with doing just that much and like that much of shading on a face. So I'm gonna do it. But am I taking the anatomy stylization? Am I taking the color palette choices? No. But I'm taking the rendering and I'm saying that's mine now. And that's how you actually copy from an art style the right way. And then over time, as you start to take more and more pieces from different art styles, it's how you build your own. Because that's all an art style is, right? It's an amalgamation of influences and things that you like in terms of art. And it's you spitting that back onto paper. So it's less about finding your art style and more being able to consciously drive your art style forward into something that you're going to like doing and you're going to like seeing. Because even if you take things from art styles that you like, over time, it's going to morph and it's going to be more and more of what your personal touch is on the style. Could some styles or things from different artists not work together, or can you always make it work? That's kind of up to you to see how it goes. So say if you like things where, if we were to do an example, I guess, you really like the anatomy of, I don't know, penny stocking. You really like that anatomy stylization, but say you still really like the rendering of this piece. Could you mash those together? Probably, actually. Will it look coherent? I don't know. That's you know, I personally can't picture it, but you could. You could absolutely mash it together. Can you then adjust it to make it work? Yes. And that's part of where it comes to like making it your own unique style, right? So you can be like, well, I'll start adjusting the rendering a little bit, or I'll adjust the anatomy to fit it a bit better. Because you're making it come together to be what you like out of those styles. You're not strictly limited to what you like out of those. Because at the end of the day, your style is more than just the rendering. It's more than just the anatomy. It's more than just the texture or the color or the whatever. It's all of it. So if it's something that you like to work with, you'll find a way to make them mesh together to be more coherent and cohesive as a drawing. So even if you're not consciously making it work together, the more you work with it, the more you'll find a way to make it work together, because your brain is just starting to mash it together and get used to it. So that's another thing, right? When you find your piece and you do your master study, after that master study or two, you take what you liked from the process and what you liked from the art that you specifically found, and you just draw. Do everything else in your normal way, and then you start to incorporate that. You do several pieces incorporating those new things that you took from it, but everything else, do it your normal way. And you'll start to see it all morph over those next few pieces until it becomes something that's not the exact same way that the original was, and it's certainly not the way that your art style was before you started to incorporate it. And you'll see the growth of actually changing your art style and making it into something new with this new information that you have. Because that's it at the end of the day, right? You're just trying to make your art style into something more of what you like by consciously directing your brain and your eyes towards that sort of thing by this critical observation. So, let's go through another art and talk about it. And another thing is too, you can have several styles. I've talked about it before, but you are more than welcome to draw in several art styles, and they're still all you. You don't have to draw in the same style all the time. So if you find that some pieces of stuff that you like work together best in one style that you like to draw in, great, grow that style. If other things that you like work better in a different style that you like to draw in, morph it into that style, you know, have your branches. It's up to you to figure out what works best in what art for what style you like to draw in over time. So our next one, God, we were contractually obligated by the International Art Police to only use one style forever. Yeah, actually, sorry. You can only have one art style, or else people are going to say that you're stealing art or tracing for the rest of your life. That should be more of a joke than it is, but it's kind of not. It should be more of a joke than it is, but it's kind of not. But it's like if you offer commissions in a style, be able to like do that style for those commissions over and over and over again. That sort of thing. So, here is another style that I really like, that you guys have seen me talk about before, that I saw it and it struck me. I was like, oh, I like what's going on here. And you can also see kind of the similarities between this one and the previous one, where once again, the rendering on this, flat, right? You can see that that's sort of what I'm drawn to. And you'll notice that with yourself, like the art styles that you really like, that you look at and you're like, I want to eat this. I want to eat this and absorb its power. You'll start to see the similarities in what it is that draws you to that art style. And for me, I love the contrast of the flat rendering with these extremely detailed black lines. it's fascinating to me to see how well it works. And again, this is another color palette that is quite similar to the previous pieces as well, and that is more yellow and pastel and low contrast, but it has that contrast here in the lines, right? So you think like, oh well, what if it's stuff that like, what if it doesn't mash together? But you'll find actually that whenever you really look at things and examine them hard, that a lot of the stuff, a lot of the art styles that you really like and wish that you had, they'll be really similar, because we do have our particular taste in art. Like, certainly there's art out there that I really like, and I'm like, that's beautiful art. But is it something that I would want to draw in? Not necessarily. And does it look vastly different? Usually. Because I'll look at art that has like these really bright, vibrant colors for like every piece, where you see people and you're like, how do you make that look coherent and cohesive? You've got like cyan and yellow and bright magenta like everywhere. Do I want to use those art, like that color palette? No. Do I love looking at it? Yes. Right? So you'll find what it is that you're actually drawn to in art. The more that you really start to critically look at all the different art that you really, really like, that you wish that you could draw in that way, you'll start to find the similarities of what it is that is actually drawing you to that art style. And it'll make things start to click. And I think that's part of why, like, it's such a big question that people have all the time is, how do you find your art style? And a lot of people will tell you that you don't. You don't. It's just something that you develop, right? But the thing is, it's more complicated than that. Because, as I'm saying here, you can find your art style. And it can be something that you can actually speed up the development on. Because yes, your art style, your personal, unique art style is something that takes time for you to develop the more that you draw. But whenever you actually sit here and critically study art and study art styles that you like, you can start to make a list of like, this is what I like. This is what I want to draw. And then you can consciously push yourself towards that and work on developing it, and then you'll have a better foundation for more quickly establishing your art style, rather than being there floundering and being like, I guess this is what's going on, I guess I'll figure it out at some point, and like wasting a bunch of time and just like sort of hoping that at some point your art will be something that you like. You have the power. You have the power. Learn to observe and actually study and pick apart things. Start looking at art with a really critical eye, which artists, they're not going to want you to do, because then you'll start to see mistakes, and that's kind of just life. You're going to start seeing a bunch of mistakes in people's art, and you're going to live with it, and you're going to not point it out, and you're going to be like, I make mistakes too. Everyone makes mistakes in art. Nothing is perfect. But you want to get really in there. And so if you're starting to see mistakes in art, that's how you know that you're really, really observing. That's how you know that you're really, really observing your art. So if you're not an artist looking to develop your art style, don't do this. You'll ruin art. You'll like ruin looking at art forever. But if you're an artist and you're looking to actually work on your art style, this is what you should be doing. And the thing is too, you know, maybe if you're not an artist, you can still look pretty close and be like, oh, this is what it is about this art that I really like. And that can still be beneficial to you. It can help you appreciate the art more. And it is certainly beneficial to the artist because it keeps your eyes on the art longer. Because God knows that we live in a world right now where people look at art for maybe 30 seconds most, and then they scroll past it. But this keeps you in it. This keeps you really absorbed in the art and like really appreciating everything that's going into it. So think a little bit more critically about your art occasionally. So again, we can see, like on this, the color palette, very similar to the other one. Except this one has like definitive line art, right? We're seeing line art everywhere. And we're seeing that we actually have shadows rendered by the line art. We have some occasional shading or blushing, possibly, with color. And you can see that a lot in the face. But for the most part, the shading is actually with lines. It's with the line art, and it's just this black shading. And you'll see that the lines are actually really thin, and then there's not much difference in the weight of the lines, unless it's to emphasize the shading of a part. So you'll see like these contour lines on the pillow, they're basically all one size, right? But then you get into somewhere that it actually has shading, and that's whenever we see the difference in the line art. So these contour lines here, pretty much one size. But when we get here, they change up the width to show the shading of those pieces coming together and pressing together. Especially in comparison to like here to here. Different, right? So that's another one of those things that's like, we're looking at it. We're really critically observing what's going on here. We're seeing that their shading is pretty much all in the line. And then after that, they're very much one size. We have some variation in some parts, like that's slightly different, but we can see that they're pretty much one size. And we can also tell from how these lines are laid down that they're not doing it in one singular smooth stroke, right? You can tell that from how they look. So you can see this line actually has this small break here. You can see again here, this break in between the sizes shows that it's different. It's not one smooth line, but that they're actually like really going in and etching in what they're doing. You can see it's somewhere in the pillow as well. Here we go. Like here, that's another like etching in what they're doing. So they're not really working on having smooth line art. They're more working on focusing on etching in the shape. It's really, really purposeful placement of lines, because most of their shape and most of their sense of dimension is coming from the lines. So it's extraordinarily detailed line work. And whenever you have these flat colors like this and this like lower contrast color palette for the actual colors, most of your life in the piece is coming from the pose and the line work. So that's why they have such like extreme detail paid attention to these lines, right? Because if they didn't, and if they were just like perfectly clean, one slope line that was all still like basically one width through the whole line, this would look dead. This piece would have no interest. It would look just like really, really boring and dead and lifeless. So that's another thing that you can learn, like whenever you learn about balance in art, it's not just with the composition, it's also with the elements, right? So because they've really simplified the colors, they balance it out by having the lines carry the complication of the piece in terms of rendering. And that's just something that you either instinctually know, or you can do stuff like this and really observe pieces that have these sort of styles to be like, that's what's making this look alive still. That's what's still making this style work as well as it is. Because it would be really easy to make an approximation of this style and have it look dead. Have it look really, really flat and dead and be like, I don't get it. I copied the style, right? But if you're not really getting into it and really observing what's going on, you're not going to see how much life the lines actually have and carry for the piece. And that's what's part of why it's so important to do more than just try to copy one-to-one a style. Because if you skip the observation and you just say, I'm going to copy this style, you're going to miss out on the nuance. You're going to miss out on anything that actually would help you to grow as an artist from a technical standpoint and from a knowledge standpoint. All you're doing is basically tracing, but with more work. And that's just not going to help you grow in the way that you're going to want to grow whenever you're looking to learn stuff from another art style. So you really, really have to get in here and find all of these nuances. All of these nuances, they're in there. Even like if the artists themselves wouldn't be able to vocalize what's going on to give these nuances, that's up to you still to observe. Because for most people, whenever it comes to their art style and their art, they aren't thinking all of these things. They aren't thinking all of the things that we're thinking right now as we're observing them as they create it. It just is sort of their innate artistic sense. It's very internal. It's just like if you were to draw how you naturally draw, you're not really thinking about it. You're just using your innate sense and your internal sensibilities of like, this is how I draw. But in order for this to work, in order for you to actually be able to learn and change and better your art style by copying other art styles, you have to externalize that sense. You have to bring it out. You have to actually harness it and use it as a tool. So, I think those are going to be my two pieces that I show for what I like and how I break them down and observe them. And let me go grab some of the ones that you guys liked. And I'm going to make you do an exercise. That's why I said if you suggest any, you better be here because I'm going to have questions. I'm going to see if you're able to actually verbalize and observe now that we've had a little bit of a discussion on how it works. I want to see if you're actually able to pick out what it is that you like. Right? Because that's how we're going to make sure that you're learning and that you're able to take this lecture and put it into practice. So let me go dig up some real quick. All right, KB, are you ready? Let me grab one of these. I'm gonna grab ones, if you gave multiple, I'm gonna grab one that has some of the most stylized bits, right? So that we can really get something that has the best chance of you being able to pick out all the pieces easily. Please pick melts. All right, I'll pick the melts for you. Let me see if there's a bigger size. Nope, that's as big as it's getting. Okay. Oh. Alright. Hey B, now that we've had our discussion, do you know what it is that you like about this piece? In this person's style? Is it the anatomy? Is it the way they render things? Is it line work? Is it the color palette? Like, I want you to really, really think and pick out what part of it you like the most in terms of elements. Because that's the most important part, is to find the thing that you like the most out of the style. Yeah, pick the thing that stands out to you the most about what you like about it. And it could be, you know, the rendering, the color palette, the anatomy, the line work, brush work even. It could be like super specific, or it could be more broad, like the texture and you know, that sort of thing. And I will have some tea, because I've been talking a lot. The color palette. Use the colors and shades and lighting. Alright, cool. Excellent. That's a good point to start off on. So, let's start picking some colors. What can we learn from this? Now that we've isolated these colors, let's really get in here and look at them. We can see that this one is mostly pinks, purples, and blues, right? We can see that as we get into shadows, into these darker colors, they're more gray. And then as we get into the lighter colors, they're more gray. But here in our midtones, that's where we have the most saturation. So these are our most saturated colors. Right? And then we have our grayer colors here. And you'll see, if you zoom out, most of the colors used are actually in that more desaturated section, right? They're in the grayer section. We're really only getting these big pops here, here, in these iridescently like highlighted areas, and then places like here. But most of the rest of this is actually quite desaturated. So we're using the saturation specifically to draw the eye to pops and emphasize areas. So that's something that we can note down, right? We can say that this style uses saturation to draw the eye. That's something that we can use. That's information that we can say, all right, I can do that for my style too. We can look at the way that they actually apply the art or the color to the art. You can see that they use really pinky shadows. So they use a lot of like really, really pinky shadows, and they make it look a bit more iridescent that way by hue shifting. Because this is more like an orangey white. And then whenever it gets into the shadows, it's much more pink. And then the further it goes, they shift into purple. So this is a very much like analogous color palette overall, because we're really staying in the red to purpley blue area of the color wheel. And you can see that the way that they work down to that to keep things cohesive is even in the hair. Again, it's a pinker purple, and then whenever it gets into the shadows, it goes more towards blue. So we're staying in very much a very specific arc of... Let me grab a little screenshot of our color wheel. We're staying in a very specific arc of working from here down to here. Yeah, you see that, right? So we have, this is where most of our highlights are. This is where our lighter tones are, and this is going to be where our shadows are. And we see that broken here with these highlights being more in this fuchsia area, but whenever we get to like the proper specular highlights here, it's back up in these tones. So that's a good way that you can sit and actually analyze the color palette and the color usage, especially if this particular piece is what you really like. And you can always take that and just rotate it, right? So if you like the way that this works, you just rotate where you're picking these colors on the wheel, and you try to emulate that. So say if you don't want something to be as pinky and purple, maybe you want it to be more blue, yellow, and green. Bam! Right? Now you can make your highlights more blue, and then it go into warmer shadows. And that's a good way that you can take it and really simplify it down and apply that. So you can rotate it like that, or you could flip it and still work from the warmer highlights to cooler shadows. So you could say, oh, well, I really like the way that it's the cooler, like pinky purple shadows. Great. If you want to do yellow to blue, like yellow, blue, green, flip it. Have your highlights be in the yellowy green area, and then again, go to the blues and the shadows. What you're learning here is just the analogous color palette and the way that they move in one specific direction whenever it comes from highlights to shadows. They're not jumping around anywhere. They're not really like going in crazy directions. They're very consistently moving in one direction from highlight to shadow for that nice contrast between warmer highlights and cooler shadows, but they're still adding some interest in areas like I pointed out here with the magenta on the leg. So that's a good way that you can look at the color. So we have that information as well. We have saturation to draw the eye, and then we have the analogous palette, right? And then we have warm to cool. highlights the shadow. We have now 3 big chunks of information from this that you can use. And that's just from analyzing only the color palette. We're not talking about the way that they render. We're not talking about any other thing. We are looking at strictly the color palette, and that's already 3 things that you can take and use. And then for that, because of the fact that we've identified, you know, it's the color palette here, right? And the way that they use the color. You do your master study, you try to copy every facet, and then you can do another copy. But instead, you just take your colors from this piece. So you draw something else, right? But you only color pick from this piece for your colors. And you only use the colors that you can get from this drawing to color that piece. And then you'll get a more innate feel and sense of how to actually apply those colors to your own art. Exactly, you'll understand how to use it and how it's used, and you'll get more of a sense of how to go about picking those colors for yourself organically next time. So you can go from big study to very specific study to then applying that knowledge organically. And that's how you would really work from this style and the fact that you really like the color palette into bringing that sense of color usage to your own art. And that's how you start to copy styles the right way. So, let's pull up someone else. Get another art here. So cool. Never thought you could catch so many things off one thing. Thanks. Yeah, and there's even more things that you could identify with the way that they handle the color, right? You can look at the way that they actually do the transitions between each shade and where they place colors. Just all sorts of things. Like, you could really go in here and be like, oh wow, they use like a really desaturated like gray here that doesn't feel like it has that much contrast with this highlight, but they use this pinkier peach tone as a transition tone, and it has more saturation, right? And you can see that in other places as well. And it's not until we get into some of the deeper shadows that they start bringing the saturation back. And you'll see that here in the hair too. So we see that we have this slightly less saturated, like, purpley color here. And then once we get into our mid shadows, it's more desaturated still. But once we get into these deep shadows, they bring back the saturation on that. So it goes into sort of like a boomerang, right? Like a boomerang almost in terms of the way that they apply it. And you could use that information as well. So there's so much that you can really like dig deep and observe and learn from how they're using just color, like only color in this piece. We're not looking at anything for their use of texture or anatomy or lines or anything else. That is all just color. And it's up to you to figure out if it's the actual color palette you like. Maybe you want to stick with more like pinky purples and stuff. Maybe you just like the way that they, again, like I said, use the saturation to guide your eye. Maybe you like the way that they handle their shadows and transitions in the shadows and the colors. Like, That's up to you. You gotta figure that out. You gotta just like keep breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down until it's like bite-sized piece of what you want to take. And maybe it could be multiple bite-sized pieces of what you want to take. But you have to actually get to the point of what extreme, like specifically granular thing do I like? Why did Slack do that? Oh, I can't see. I just want to open this. I don't want to open it in split view. Gross. There was notifications and I wanted them away. But Slack, I guess, updated and added split view. Hate that. Blown away or amazing? Not really. I've figured this out earlier than some people do, and more in like a way that can be verbalized. Because a lot of artists will do this, but they don't know how to describe it, or they don't really consciously clock that they're doing it. So once you harness that power, you're like, oh, now that I know that this is what I'm doing, I'm gonna do it for real. I'm gonna do it hardcore. I'm gonna really dig deep in this shit. Art teacher talent, I would never be able to be a teacher. I was gonna say at the beginning, which I totally forgot, I was like, I'm deeply unqualified to talk about anything like this. I only have an art degree, but I'm not a teacher, and I have an art degree and that's it. I'm deeply unqualified. This is just how I personally approach this. And I know that some of my other art friends have said that it's not like a thing that people know how to do inherently. Hey, it's not time yet for you. I don't care if the demons are barking. It's not time yet. We have glasses, looks qualified enough. That's true. I have all the knowledge now. I have glasses. What's interesting here, right, is because we looked at this one piece, but we can do it with another one from the same artist, and you'll actually start to see some of these similarities. Even though you would think that these are very different pieces, they're much closer than you think. Like, even if we just look at specifically color, right? So let's do that. Let's do that. Let's look at one of the other pieces. Right? You look between these two, and initially your thought is that they have very different color palettes, that they have very different colors. But when we actually look closer, they're a lot more similar than you think. The main thing here is they're both still using this section. Do you see that? They're still using this analogous zone of the color wheel. And yet they have completely different vibes and a completely different seeming color palette. Right? It's still analogous. And they're still working from mostly orange to this blue. But they've extended some of the blue into more of this tealy area. So even though at face value you think, oh, they're using a complementary palette, whenever you actually look at all of the colors present, you see, wait, they're still using this, like, red, blue, purple, like, analogous color palette. We just have a few more different accent pops in some areas around, like, this zone. They just extended it a little. But they're using the same area. They're using that same sort of color palette that they like. They've just changed the value. From here, it's pastel, but here, we have more saturation in our midtones. But we're still getting those more saturated pops in comparison to everything else. There's still these pastel, like, desaturated areas, but the value is lowered as well. So it gives more depth to the colors. Because in here we have our blues and they're here, but here on the right side our blues are closer to here. But they're still basically the same colors. So you'll start to see that sort of thing happening in art, especially if it's like an artist that you like their color palette specifically. You'll be able to be like, oh wow, that's the same colors. It's just nudged a little. It's still the same base colors at work, but you'll see different accents thrown in. But you'll see that it's the main palette. It's pretty much the same. You'll see that this artist seems to really like having accents from this area, while the main colors are here. Because you see that here too, like with this, that's more in this area. Even in the other one, you see it too? Yeah. So, it's amazing what you can do using the same basic color palette. Just change it a little. And if you look at the way that they apply the colors here as well, you'll again see that more desaturated shadow in the mid shadows going into a deeper saturated shadow and having more saturation in areas of transition between the shadows and the highlights and midtones. So once you really dig into the paint, right? You get deep in the paint on one piece, you'll start to just see that quicker in other pieces. So the more that you really observe and look and figure out what it is about one piece of the artist that you like, you'll start to be able to be like, oh, they do that, they do that, they do that. That's a consistent thing that they do. And that builds on your own ability to observe and then figure out how to apply that. Just a little fun thing there, especially in terms of color palette. All right, let's get our next example. Our next artist. Ark, are you here? Roll call. Ark, are you here? Before I show yours, you have to be here to answer questions. Might not. Is Isla still live? I don't know. Is Isla still live? She is. He's probably watching Isla. That's fine. We'll go to Mabu. Better be ready. Answer questions. All right. Okay. Once again, I come to you with the question of what is it about this style that you like. You have to pick one thing, right? Is it the anatomy? Is it the color usage? Is it the rendering? Is it the texture? What is it? Figure it out. You like how he renders? Okay. Can you point out like a specific section of the rendering so that we can really look at it close? Or is it more just like, even if you're just like, I like how the hair is rendered, I like how like the clothes are rendered, something of that sort, like, because what is render for dummies? So rendering is how you apply the shadows and highlights, right? Rendering is going to be like your volumetric shading, your cast shadows, your specular highlights, that sort of thing. But it also goes more into how those are actually applied, rather than just them in general, if that makes sense. Like, when you look at someone's rendering, you're looking at, like, their edge work. Do they use soft or hard edges? Is it, like, more airbrushed? That sort of thing. That's what we mean by rendering. It's what you do to take it from flats to having depth. Squirrely, it's not time for you. Go lay down. Especially on the clothes. Okay, cool. We'll look at the clothes, right? And we're looking at the rendering here. So we're not looking at the color choices. We're not looking at line work. We're not looking at anatomy. We're not looking at anything but rendering. Here, you can see this artist actually uses a pretty classic example of hard versus soft edge. So we're going to use this equals hard edge. And then a blue is going to be our soft edge. So let's start looking at how they render the clothes, right? We have hard edge, hard edge, hard, hard, hard edge, right? So we're seeing a lot of hard edges here whenever we're actually at the highlight area of the folds in terms of the shadow around them. And then you'll see as it goes from the highlighted area into the shadow, back into the base, we have soft edge, soft edge, softer edge, and that continues on. Like, this is softer edges, this softer edges, right? So we see that this artist is following soft edge, hard edge, soft edge, hard edge, soft, hard, hard, and then it softens. And we see that again here, hard, hard, hard edge. And you can have that kind of really just feed into each other, but it's a very, very like classic use of hard and soft edges, right? if you have a hard edge on one side of a shadow, try to have a soft edge on the other side. And that's basically what you're seeing here, is they'll have one edge really emphasized, and then the rest of it will fade into a soft edge. And that really helps in displaying volume. So you can see hard, hard, and then it goes soft, right? So whenever you're looking to apply that sort of thing yourself, what we would do is we say, okay, if I were to do something that has, say it's got the highlight here and then the shadows here, we'd say, okay, here's my shading, and we're going to leave that a hard edge, and then we come in and soften the other side. So we have our hard edge to our soft edge. And that's going to be your thing that you're going to focus on. Is your hard edge to your soft edge. Hard, soft. And that's a very, very common thing that you'll see in art. Is hard edge, soft edge. Hard edge, soft edge. Hard edge, soft edge. And that's going to be your edge work on your shading. And then they use very high contrast colors for the highlights, but their shadows are flatter. So that's going to be another thing as well, but that will affect what sort of cloth this looks like as well. So that's another thing. You have to be aware of your edge control when it comes to your shading for textures as well. So you need to know when to have your hard edge and your soft edge in your shadows, or when to have it in things like your highlights. Because if you just hard edge, soft edge everything, it'll end up looking like it's all the same material. But you'll still be able to find ways to differentiate material while having that edge control. Cause say if we wanted this to look like really shiny latex or something. Really shiny latex. We're gonna say, alright, this is our really shiny latex. And we want to have a hard edge here. On that. And then hard edge here on the highlight. So start with your hard edges. And for the latex, we'll only soften the edge slightly. So we'll go in and soften it here like that, but only just slightly. So that's part of where it comes in with your edge work too. It's like how deep of a crevice it is. What is the material? How soft should our soft edge be? Because you can see in places that it has the soft edge that it's not even fully softened. Like this is a soft edge area, but you'll see that it actually still has some harder edge here before it fades. And then it has some harder edge here as well. So really like get in there into the nitty gritty of hard and soft, hard and soft, hard and soft on the edges. Because we could still make this look like really, really shiny and a different texture from this, but we still have a hard edge and a soft edge. But that's one of your like very, very basic art principles whenever it comes to rendering and shading and trying to do things in a more clean, realistic way is going to be your hard edges and your soft edges. I can also see that this artist is actually pretty straightforward in terms of color in their rendering. They don't really have very many color changes, like in terms of transitioning from highlights to shadows, like we've seen on some of these other art styles, that you'll have like a more saturated line here before it terminates into the shadow. Here we're seeing they kind of just like will splash a different color in here occasionally. Welcome, Cool Nights. Hi, Isla, my wife, La. Welcome to our extremely in-depth art lecture. Welcome to our art lecture, where we talk about how to copy art styles the right way. Basically a style I wanted to mimic. Yeah, so if you're liking the rendering, again, that's like I said, your next step is going to be your master study. Try to copy everything in this style exactly as is. And then you're going to do your specific study where you copy the rendering exactly as is. And then you do your pieces where you just start to incorporate the process of rendering into your own style. So that's going to be your next step if you really want to absorb this person's rendering. Master study, specific study. Put it in practice. And it'll start to morph and become more of your particular type. Your particular art style. Plagiarism, yeah, the right way. Didn't know master study was so central to it. You can skip the master study, but I think you'll find it more helpful in terms of really speeding up the process to do the master study. Because whenever you're doing the master study, you might be thinking about like something that you really want to focus on in the first place, right? You're like, oh, I really like this. But whenever you do the master study, you might find yourself being like, actually, I really like the way that they do this on this part, or the color choices that they make. So you'll find things that you do and don't like through the master study, and then you can do your specific studies with that. Just realized I recognize who's in this artwork. My sister Ray. Rich-chan. Alright. Next piece. Next artist. Whose style are we stealing next? The more analysis you do, the better it goes. Exactly. Exactly. Alright, who are we stealing next? Let's see. Random, are you here? Random. Ark should be here. Is Ark here now? I feel like I'm talking to Ghost. Ark, are you with us? Move the planchette to yes. Alright, cool. We'll do random and then arcs. Because random gave us one piece specifically to look at. I'm in the walls? Oh god, get out of my walls. Get out of my walls. Alright, let me update our on-screen username as well, but it's cozy in here. No! Those are my walls. They're thin. I don't think you would fit in the walls, actually. A mouse might have difficulty living in these walls. Alright. So, I once again ask you, what is it about this specific art style that you like? Is it the anatomy? Is it the rendering? Is it the color palette? Is it the line work? Is it the texturing? What is it? We're gonna really hone in on the one. Built different. Let's get into the nitty-gritty about one thing. Color palette, line work, and shading. Okay. Alright. Well, we already covered how to do analysis of the color palette, right? So, for those who came in afterwards, if you really like the color palette and the color work of what an artist uses, start color picking. Look at their art. Pull up a bunch of different pieces. Pick colors. Start looking at what they use. Start really objectively observing it outside of just on the piece where they're all next to each other. And you'll start to see, hey, whenever they're not near each other, they look really different. Right? You'll see like, oh man, these are a lot grayer than I thought. Or they're a lot more like yellowy or something. You know, that sort of thing. The line work we can talk about for sure. Alright, let's look at their lines. Let's zoom in here. I don't think that there was a much bigger size of this. Was there? Was I crazy? Did I not get a big one? Nope, this is as big as it gets. Okay, cool. So, when we look at the lines, they have very much the feeling of a ink sketch. The feelings of an ink sketch. Manga tone textures, is there a better way to identify those? In what way do you mean? Like the ones that'll be like, like the scrapings and cross hatchings in that way? And then dots? Is that what you mean by the manga tones? So we can see here in the line work that it is vastly different. Dots with their density. You can find brushes that have like the tones on them, right? That's actually more of just a grayscale, but turn it into tones sort of thing. It's less style and more use this specific tool for it, if that makes sense. That makes sense? Okay, cool. So you can see like the line work is like really choppy. It's definitely not in smooth lines, and we have a lot of different variation in width. Like, this is really chunky to much thinner here. And it's really not, like, consistent. So it looks like they're using something that is very much more reminiscent of almost a dip pen. And that they're really getting a lot of variation between when they push and pull and how hard they push. And they're kind of laying these down quickly. Like they're getting the shape very, very quickly and really focusing on sculpting it. Like they're, again, sort of like the other art, they're etching in the shape without worrying about it being perfect. They're really, really laying it down like quickly. And that's part of why you see the difference in the variation of line width. You can see they make a decision and then they go. They're really decisive with laying down the lines. And that is something that you can practice, but takes a long time to really master. Because you have to know what it is you're laying down whenever you're laying down those lines. You gotta know, like, where you're going, what you're doing, what shape you're about to draw. But you can see in the way that it has those thick to thin, really quick, and then they're in choppier lines, that's what's happening. So basically they're saying like, this line, that. They're really not being precious with the way that they're laying down the lines. Right? It's not so much about the line work itself. Like that's not a focus in this art. For the artist, you can see that the lines are kind of just there. They're there to be the shape and to hold things, but they're not there to really be the star of the show. But you'll find that because of the way that they have all these lines in places, that it's actually bringing a lot of life. Like the fact that they're so decisive with it and they have such variation in the size, that it's bringing a lot of dynamicism to the art. So if you were looking to study this based on the line work, we would say that they have a lot of weight, variation. So you're going to want to be able to use a pen that's going to let you get that really like dynamic variation. You're going to want something that really responds to your pressure, right? So that you can really like decisively lay those down. And you can say that they have very decisive lines. They're choppy, but not in a sketchy way. Like they're not sitting here being like, oh, let me draw the same line 1,000 times so I can get that shape built up. They're choppy in a this line to that line way. Like they know exactly where to place the line and when to stop it to build the shape that they're working on. And you can see that right here especially, they have like this line, that line, that line. It's not about like perfecting it. They're just saying, those are the lines I need for that contour. So it's different from like the chicken scratchy, like, oh, I'm not very confident in this line. They're do. It's out. It's on there. That's done. They're moving on. Like, they're very, very decisively placing these lines down. Once again, my buttons are doing their job. So, we have decisive lines. Oh, if my buttons would work. Thank you. Decisive lines. But we have choppy lines. Because that's something that you can still observe and be like, okay, I like this look. And I can see that it's a lot of broken lines, right? It's like really, there's a lot of broken lines here or there, and they're using it to detail stuff because the rendering is really simple. It's very, very sketchy overall in terms of the feel. So even if the lines aren't like sketchy, they're still sketchy because they're not like connected. They're not one flowing piece, right? It still overall gives the feeling of a sketchy, rougher piece. And you can see that still like lines, 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 lines. They have a lot of texture given by the lines, and even in the shading, there's a lot of lines going on. It's not really so much like big swaths of shading. They'll have really sculpted in shading where you can see that they're like sort of scribbling it in. And you can see that here as well. Like they're really scribbling in the shading and getting it in quickly. Like this is one big and then da da. Like everything is super, super decisive and super quick and super efficient. They know exactly where to lay it down and how much to scribble and what they need to show the contours, and then they move on. Like this style is very much like about efficiency. You can see that even here, like they don't really clean up their lines. Like we have just a rogue line coming off the hair here, and they just move on. They have lines that intersect, they just move on. So it's about laying it down and keeping the life in it, is what I would say this style has going for it. It's quick, it's confident, it's efficient, and because of the way that they're able to lay this all down really cleanly without overworking it, it keeps a lot of the life that you get from a sketch, but still has more of the clean work that a finished piece has. So this person knows, like, they're not overworking their art. They're not rendering it to death. They're not being precious with their lines. They're getting it out. They're getting it on paper. They're getting it colored. They're sending it out. Oh, thank you for coming by. Please have a wonderful rest of your day. And you can see, like, through the whole piece, it has just this, like, I'm here, I'm putting it down, I know what I'm seeing, I know what I need to do to actually emphasize the shapes and the shadows. Even though there's not a lot of contrast, that's another thing too. There's not a ton of contrast in any of the shading and shadows, but you'll also see, like we were pointing out earlier in some of the shading, they have these more saturated transition areas in terms of shading. So we have a saturated transition into less saturated shadow areas. And I think what it looks like they're using is something that's more like this pen. This one that's like more transparent, and then they're just building up. Because you can see areas where it starts to overlap on itself. Like here is a good example. So it's probably more like a swath of this shading is put down, and then they say like that. Then again, a swath of shading here, and then they went in and did that. So you can even break down like the brushwork. Like this is like really swath shading, swapped shading, and then like that. That's basically the same color, just sort of laid over itself, but like with more opacity. So you can really, really, really get in there about what's going on. What was the other part? I know we talked about the color, the line work. Was it the rendering that you said? I lost it. I got deep in the paint and I lost it. Shading! Oh, okay, well, I managed to cover that as well. But you can see now, like, that's how you start to break it down. You really just get in there and you start looking at each piece. You're like, okay, well, their lines are really confident. They're just sort of like laying down exactly what they need to get the shape, and they'll use some for extra detail work. But for the most part, they're not really precious and they just sort of go. They're not worrying about perfect lines. They're just worrying about getting things down in the shape that they want. Right? And then you can see that the shading, again, same thing. They're not being really precious about where it's going, and it adds a lot of texture that way as well, because it's not super smooth. And that's also part of what really carries this piece to make it look more polished. So even though it's not worked to death, and it's actually still very simple because of the way that they laid down the different layers of the shading on top of itself, it looks like it has a lot more actual polish put into it. But I think that's our observation on this one. Which means we're gonna do arcs after squirrel time. That'll be next. Arcs after squirrel time. But you can see, like I said, this style is very much about efficiency. They're busting these out. They're getting it on paper, and they're getting it out, and they're moving on. And that is a hard skill to learn. That just takes building your confidence as an artist to get to that point. To be able to so decisively lay things down and it read as decisive and it actually be correct. I know! Hers crybaby! Alright. Squirrel time for a moment and then we'll be back and observe more art. I'm back. I came back to my seat and I looked at this and I was like, this looks like the ravings of a crazy person. This looks like the work of a madman. It's starting to sprinkle outside, so now I have water on my glasses that I just washed this morning. Yeah, it was quick because it's starting to rain. Alright. Fireman, thank you for the wave, thank you. Shane, thank you for the wave, thank you. Random, thank you for the wave, thank you. KD, thank you for the wave, thank you. Mako, thank you for the wave, thank you. Mao, thank you for the wave, thank you. And Gary, thank you for the wave, thank you. What's Squirrel like with rain? She doesn't like it. Have to wash your glasses? If you only use those little, like, shitty microfiber cloths, it just feels like it smudges shit around at some point, right? Like, it just gets full of garbage and it feels like you're just smudging everything everywhere. So, periodically, you have to actually wash them, so you get a little bit of dish soap and you wash them with some tepid water and you get them all nice and clean. It also helps with the longevity of your glasses because if you leave all your face oils and crud on it, it's gonna be gross and it'll break it down. You'll also, that's a good way to get breakouts too on your face where the arms of your glasses are, is to never wash the frames of your glasses, and then you just have that buildup of face crud on those forever. Use lens cleaner? Look, man, dish soap does the exact same thing, and it's cheaper and easier to have on hand all the time. Like a drop of Dawn on it. Beautiful, perfect. Doesn't hurt the coatings as long as you use tepid water. If you get into hot water, that might be an issue, but yeah. Wash your whole glasses. Use lens cleaner, wash my dishes. That would be really fascinating, actually. I know that's a joke, but I think that would be really fascinating. Toss them into a washing machine? Okay, tell me how it goes. Tell me how it goes. Okay, time for my next crazy person, ravings. Ark, you gave me very many of this one artist to pick from. Is there a particular one that you think best exemplifies what you like from this artist the most? The second one? Okay, that one has 4. Unless I opened them in the wrong order. Hold on. Yeah, that one has 4. The first, the third? The gray hair dude? Alright, cool. That's the third one. I'm glad nobody can math. As usual. Or is it the second? Wait! It is the second. I was thinking that Twitter was taking the first link and turning it into the preview tweet, right? So I was going like, the preview tweet is the first one, and then the first link is the second one, and then the second link is the third one. But it's probably the other way around. A first, second, and then the third is the preview. Right? Because I was thinking of websites and how they usually function. Usually they turn the first link that you put in as the preview. That's why I was thinking in that way. Twitter, it's the last. That's weird. That's weird. I mean, that's the way that it would make the most sense, you know? Because it's at the bottom of the tweet, so it should be the last thing. But, like, most everything else does the first thing that you do. And thus, it's weird. Okay. Let me update this. To be fair, at least I said no one can count. Not like only you guys, but no one can count. Me included. Okay, so what would you say specifically is it that this artist does that you like the most? The anatomy, the color, the textures, the rendering, the line work. What is it? What is it about their art that tickles your brain? Squirrel can't even read a clock. So true. She can't. Can't even read a clock. The coloring and the shading. Okay. I was definitely noticing that they have a pretty consistent color language whenever I was looking over the different pieces. So, unsurprising that you would say the coloring. So we're going to look at their colors. Let's start color picking. Damn. Hold on. I got distracted a second by the arm. Damn. That's a lot of detail to have in that shading. For how simplistic the rest of the shading is. I see you. I see you. See, that's also part of why you get in it, man. Because if you're just looking this at the surface, you're like, this is really simplistic shading. But when you get in the paint, you're like, oh shit, look at that. They really like, look at how much detail this is in terms of actually shading this the muscularness, right? They went in. They said this part's really important to me, actually. Like, everything else has really, like, broad shading. So that's really fascinating. Yeah, look, everything else, like I said, everything else has really broad shading. So to come in and then see the difference in shading on, like, the actual muscular definition is fascinating. Because they don't pay that same attention to the shading and everywhere else. Like, these are really, really broad swaths of shadows that don't even get, like, fully into the, like, each crevice, right? That you would have in all of these different things. They really simplify the shapes on the shading and everywhere else. Except for that. Fascinating. That's why you get in this shit. This is why you get in here and you really look. You can also see too the difference in the rendering of the shadows. Right? Like, basically all these other shadows are very hard. Very hard edges all the way through. But when you get into this arm, we get more of the soft and hard edges. Like, they actually feather it out. But even in comparison, like, old girl's tummy, it's still hard. It's still hard edges. This artist must really like arms. Cause that's fascinating. Excuse me as I open up some more of their art so I can see if this truly continues to carry on. Let me examine some more arms that they've drawn. It's like when you look at someone's art and you're like, oh, you like feet. I think we've found what this artist likes. Don't wake them up. You know it's true. You know it's true. That's how it works. If an artist really focuses on one part of a piece, that's their personal enjoyment spot. That's their thing. But I don't say it carries over to, like, sneakers or shoes. Some people just like shoes. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they like feet. This person has a very, like, watercolor emulating style. And I think that's part of why they shade things in the way that they do, because they're trying to emulate the sense of using watercolor in traditional media. And as I look through more of their media tab, I can see that they have more brushes that have like that sort of watercolor edge. As someone that has worked with actual watercolor, I definitely see that this person really likes the style of watercolors, but they work in digital. And that's part of what's going on with their colors too, I think. Is that to... Ooh, there's a process video of this Oni piece. Is that to emulate the watercolors. It seems like they use these very simplistic shadows, not only in shape, but in tone as well. Fascinating. Okay. Not arms, but they have a Tokidon illustration way down that has a pretty well-defined bit of images. They like their muscles, I guess. Perhaps that's their fixation. It's about the muscles. Okay, so yeah. We can see that their color and shading is very similar to watercolors. Which means, if you want to emulate it, boy, have I got news for you. Just start watching, or looking at things that are, you know, actually using watercolors. start looking at how using actual watercolors works. And you can really start to get into the paint of emulating what they're doing in that way. Because this is very watercolory, or one might even say kind of emulating using like Copic markers. This is very much a digital trying to look more traditional style. If you get what I'm saying. You can see that even with like the texture that they put on their canvas, or the texture of the brushes that they use, has this like stippling in here. Where you can see that it's not like completely opaque, because it has this stippling effect as if it's on like a watercolor paper. A hot press one, but a watercolor paper nonetheless. So you can see that the way that these colors are being built up is they sort of have like these base colors. And then it's as if it's had more color glazed on top of it. And then it's just built up from there. Which is part of why they have these hard lines. Which you can absolutely have the softer edges in watercoloring, but it's a lot easier to control whenever you keep those harder edges. The places that it's like less like watercolor is here, and like these shiny materials. But you can see here they have like really hard edges in almost everything, except whatever's going on here. Hard edges for everything but the muscles and metal. The metal has softer edges, but the muscles, they said, damn, soft edges, show all those contours. You can actually see there's so much detail in the shading on this too, this cloth. It's fascinating what they choose to put like detail in terms of the shading. Like, look at how much this has going on in it. Like, this is really, really detailed shading. With lots of different variations in tone. There's so much happening in that shading. Meanwhile, over here it's like, you know, big chunk. I don't know what their determining factor is and what they put more shading on. That'd be one of those things that you would really have to study a lot of their works to be like, okay, what is it that we could potentially figure out is the mindset behind what receives more detailed shading, right? Because for the most part, this is very simplistic in terms of shading. Like, we have the skin is one tone, right? The skin is basically one tone. And then it has these sort of blushed out, like, softer areas in some places. And then the rest is like this hard shadow. This accepting. What the fuck's going on with the arms? They must like muscles. But you can see, like, if you really want to emulate what's going on here with the colors and the shading, as I said earlier, find a piece that you like the colors of, and then color pick and only use the colors from that piece, right? So you do your master study. Try to copy the style exactly as it is on every facet of it, right? And you can either do the master study by trying to copy a particular piece, or you can do a master study by drawing your own piece and then just trying to apply every facet of the style to it. And then you do your specific study. So for this one, it would be, again, the color. So find one that you really like the color palette of, and then you're going to draw something and only color pick from the piece that you're referencing for their color usage. And you're going to use only those colors so you can understand their color ethos when it comes to picking colors. And you're going to also try to shade the same way that they do, which is usually in these large, broad swabs of hard edge shadow. Even here, you'll have these hard edges, hard edges, hard edges. So there's very, very, very few areas where they actually have soft edges to their shadows and shading. It's really only in this and the metal, and then the rest of it's more gradients with hard shadows on top, if that makes sense. So you'll see, like in this box, we have a gradient. And in watercolor, that would be a gradient wash. And you'll do the same thing in watercolor, right? If you want something to have a gradient with shading on top, you would do a gradient wash, and then you would go back in and shade those areas. So that's another thing that we see as well here, like in this actually has more of a gradient wash coming from here to here. And then it has the shading glazed on top. So a lot of the focus of this style with the color is making sure that those base colors under the actual shadows is laid well. And then additionally, you'll see that they actually have quite thick line art. And part of that is to do with the fact that they do have the more simple shading. So to really offset the shapes and volumes and like different pieces of the art, they use thicker line art, because their shading actually doesn't have a ton of contrast in a lot of areas. So they use thicker contour lines to really set things off. But it's not thick on every part of it. Like, you'll see, like, it's thick here, right? But it's actually quite thin here in the hair. And here in the hair. So that's another thing that's going to take a lot more observation to see what it is specifically that they use the thick line art to offset. It seems like they use it for mostly like body pieces, and then for some things that have a lot more weight to them. Like you would imagine this cape is fairly heavy if it's not giving us a bunch of shadows. If it's not wrinkling very much whenever he's holding it up like this and draping it, it's probably a heavy fabric. So that's why it has such a heavy line around it. But you'll see like the hair mostly has thinner lines because it's quite light and wispy. And again, like this blanket or rug or whatever this is, it also, you can see that it is quite heavy in terms of fabric because of the way that it's like really bunched up. You have really big folds here, like even in the shading, it's mostly larger folds. So it also gets this thick, heavy line work. So it seems like they use this thicker line work to help emphasize like the weight of the actual thing. At least in this piece. It's because in some of their other pieces, it seems like they have just like thicker line art to help something stand out a bit more on what it's on if it has more similar colors. But this one, it seems like it's very much about like the weight of the thing that's actually being lined is helping to emphasize like, oh, that's quite heavy. So interesting. The muscles are still really getting to me. Wonder if they're doing this consciously or if it's just intuitive. It's probably all intuitive, truthfully. And that's part of why it's not like super consistent. But I do notice like whenever I look through some of their other pieces, you can still get that sense of like they're using thicker lines for like heavier things. Like in this one, the main coat outline is thicker, but on the fuzz it's very thin, and then on like this light petticoat underneath her skirt, it's very thin line work. So it does seem to help give a sense of actual object weight in their art. But yes. Like I've said, master study. Copy it, all of it, exactly, every facet. Specific study. Once you've done the master study, you'll figure out what parts you actually like working with. So after that, you do the specific study of doing those parts on a piece that is... The rest of it is your drawing except for those specific parts. So if you like the line work and you like the shading and the colors, that would be your specific study. You're going to draw something and you're going to use the line work style, the shading, and the color palette. And then after your specific study, you're going to practice incorporating those things into your art without using a reference, right? You're going to be like, okay, now I get what they do, and I'm going to now draw some pieces using what I've learned from them, and it'll morph and mash up with your art style to be more of your own unique art style, right? Because we're copying the right way, not the exact way. It's very eye-opening. I'm now noticing a lot from their works. Yeah, see? That was the main goal in this, is to show you, like, how to really, really get into an art piece. How to really, actually, objectively, and critically observe what's happening in an art style, rather than just being like, I like it. Wish I could draw like it, but I don't know how to really achieve that. A good exercise for that as well is like, I know it's a dead, dying trend, but the trend that there was of, you know, drawing things in the art styles of a bunch of different shows, like that's another really good way to practice observation in what makes an art style that art style, because that is basically a bunch of mini master studies into those different art styles. Yeah, that art meme. Right? Because you have to be able to critically observe, like, what it is about those styles that makes them so recognizable as that style in order to properly copy it and apply it to your piece. Because that's basically a bunch of just like mini master studies into anatomy, texture, coloring, line work, everything about that style. Isla and Crayon Shin-chan. Excellent choice. We love Crayon Shin-chan. Ever consider becoming an art teacher? I would be a terrible teacher. I'd be a dreadful teacher. I wouldn't have the patience. This I can kind of just spit it out at you guys, but if you ask me questions because you didn't understand, I wouldn't be able to do it. I certainly know how people in a classroom behave as well, and I would hate dealing with that. I would hate dealing with that. It'd be a classroom of shut the fuck up. Sit down. I included the 15 example, not just to pander to you. I was gonna bring up that I like the line work, but this analysis already dealt with it. There you go. And like, as you grow and see more styles over time, you can change your style over time. It's not gonna be the same throughout your whole life. And you can just keep taking more and more pieces of other styles until yours is less and less recognizable as being tied to those styles. And again, you have so many different styles that you can draw in. You can have a more painterly style. You can have one that's like really line work heavy. Like, there's nothing to stop you from just drawing whatever you want, however you want in that moment. You have a favorite artist aside from yourself? I wouldn't even say I'm a favorite artist of me. So... But I definitely have artists that I really, really like their stuff. And I notice that I tend to gravitate towards more painty styles of art as someone who does a lot of line work. I really like looking at people who have really nice, like, painterly art styles because it's something that I personally struggle with. Because I really like doing nice, clean artwork that has, not artwork, but like line work. I like doing nice, clean line work with nice, like, difference in line weight. And I tend to work my shading to death. I work my shading to death and to mush until it's gone. So whenever I look at pieces that have like really decisive, like hard edges on every shadow where they just are throwing down blobs of color, I'm like, God, that's cool. Would love to understand how to not look at it and be like, it's too different. It's standing out too much. To see people being intrigued by styles opposed to them. Yeah. Like, there's so much that you can learn from any art style that you look at, honestly. So much. But I think... I don't know if I need to do another observation. I think we've gotten the point across of how to objectively analyze all the different parts of art. This has been a 2.5 hour long lecture. Which is longer than most college courses by that point. Or right about at that point. Welcome to my college class. Please pay your tuition. It is $40,000 for one class. Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna have to take another look for that one. Yeah, student debts. Don't think Streamlabs will allow that much? God, I would hope not. That would be insane. That would be crazy. No, I'm not going to require a tuition fee. I guess I'll be nice and not require tuition. Like all the other teachers in this country, I'll be broke. Ooh, education. Even Dogecoin, you really don't value my teaching then. Oh, Fireman! Thank you for the class fee. Best I can do is this. Thank you. And a big mwah to the Aka hero. So, to go over your steps here in art style. I'm not gonna write it down because frankly my handwriting is possibly impossible to read for most of you. For most of you. See an art style you like, open it up as big as you can. Zoom in. Look at every little pixel, every line, every edge of a shadow, every bit of it. Get deep in there. Start making note of what you're seeing. Look at the texture, look at the color choices, look at the rendering, look at the line work. If you like the anatomy, start drawing the building blocks of that anatomy to understand the proportions. Right? Get deep in there until you observed all you can about it. Look at like, oh, do they use ambient occlusion? Do they use volumetric shading? Do you use like more cast shadows? The anatomy is a big reason I suggested the one I did. Where is it? Hold on. I'll grab yours and we can do like a quick draw over of how to actually do the building blocks there. Gary, this is bugged. It's actually 40,000. I believe you, Gary. Thank you for your class fee. Thank you. And then Geronimo, just wait whenever I get 7 figures via Powerball. Thank you, Geronimo. Thank you, thank you. Alright, let me grab a piece. Wish my birds would shut up. Wanna have mine viewed too? I looked at them. I looked at them all. There's only so many times I can do the same crazy person rambling on top of them. I'm trying to find a piece that has a bit less dynamic point of view, so we can actually look at the anatomy better. I actually got a scholarship for Nami's art college. This is technically what I had to pay. Thank you, KB. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so yeah. When I talk about drawing over the building blocks, I mean like get in here and be like, okay, this is our circle for the head, and then there's that, and then that, and then the mouth is here, the nose is here, the eyes are here, there's the eyebrows, our ears are like this diamond shape, you know, like really get in there, be like, okay, just start to break it down to what things are so that you can look at the proportions of it. And that way, whenever you hide the artwork, you can actually see more of like what the proportions are. So you can understand more of what's going into their anatomy choices. Right? So we could actually use this now. To fill it with our own, right? You could take it and be like, okay, so this is part of my specific study, is you take it and then you say, here's my, like, specific study on this. Now I've got the nose, and I got, like, the mouth is here, right? So you can use this building block now that you've copied from this as your specific study start point. And then just go off of what you've got here in studying the anatomy in order to understand how they actually construct this. So this is how I would use this sort of study in terms of wanting to understand like how they construct the anatomy. And you could just make a completely different piece. But of course, in this sort of situation, you've traced, please understand, don't do that and then post it for other people. Don't claim it as your own art. When you're doing your studies, it's for you, especially if it's going to be an anatomy study where you do this. Be smart. You've traced and or heavily referenced. But once you understand like their proportions that they use for stuff, you can be like, okay, well now I get it. And I know like this is how they actually break down the proportions, and now I can use it for my own stuff. So now we can see like, oh, whenever they do the head, it's like this, And then the mouth is here, the nose is here, the eyes are here, the eyebrows, and then they have that. Like, you just are getting in the habit of like knowing how to break down the anatomy, and then you can fill it in with your other pieces. So it doesn't all have to look exactly like theirs after that study. You see what I'm saying? That's how you would go about learning the anatomy of an art style and seeing what it is you like about it and breaking it down. You draw the building blocks over it, use that as your specific study, and then try to emulate those proportions with the rest of it being your own style. And then you move on. And you keep using that, and it'll morph and fit more of like what you personally like and do, and be more of your own unique style. So when you do your studies, you can share it with your friends and be like, hey, look guys, I did a study based off of this, but please, for the love of God. If you're gonna do something like an anatomy study where you do the building blocks on top and then use those, don't post it. If it's something like you're just doing a coloring study, that's fine. When you're doing your master's study that you're trying to copy everything, maybe don't. But if you're doing like your specific study where it's like color or texture or line work or rendering, that's still your art. Like, it's yours. But if you're doing a specific study where it's like the anatomy and you're doing it with the building blocks like this, it's not your art right now. And not yours. You're tracing or heavily referencing is what we would call it, and people won't like it. So, if it comes from anatomy being the thing that you really like about the art style, you have to be more careful about the way that you share studies if you do them and share them. Be smart. Be smart. I'm telling you right now, don't just copy and paste it and be like, I drew this. Don't do that. Don't do that. This is for you to learn and grow. And then you can... Yeah, don't. Thank you. In this particular facet, you have to be super, super careful because of the way that you're doing the study. Please be so careful. Please. But I think that now covers everything. We got like the texture and the rendering and the colors, the line work, and now the anatomy. Go forth. Study art styles critically. Observe them. In this situation, you can be like, okay, so you can see that like whenever you use the building blocks, the mouth here is actually at the bottom of the circle. The nose and the eyes are really close together. The eyebrows are actually quite high up on the head. That sort of thing, you know? It's about recognizing the proportions that are being used in the building blocks so that you can bring those proportions to your own art, if that's what you like about it whenever it comes to the anatomy. And the same thing, like if you really like the way that someone draws hands, study what it is about the way that they draw hands that you like. Just break it down, break it down, break it down, break it down. And then throw everything together in one big mixing bowl and make an art style out of it. I am hearing a timer go off in my kitchen, and it's making me feel a little insane. because it keeps going off. And I don't know what it's for. I didn't set this. Yeah, it's going beep beep, beep beep, beep beep, beep beep. And I'm like, what is this? Please. I can't stand it. I'm gonna go crazy. Forget some tendies in the air fryer? No. No, I haven't. I haven't put any tendies in the air fryer. No one's going to turn it off. I don't know who did it. I don't know who started it in the first place. I would assume my stepdad. And he's playing a game right now on his computer. So he's not hearing it because he's got headphones on. But I have one can of my headphones off. So I hear it. I hear it. Yeah, he's home. It's Saturday. He works like a real Monday to Friday, not 9 to 5 job. And not 9 to 5, but he is Monday to Friday. One of those real office people jobs. So I was gonna burn the pizza rolls. I don't think we have any pizza rolls in my house right now. But yes, go forth. Look at art. Really look at it. Look really deep at it. Zoom in. And draw over stuff. Keep it to yourself. Once you start doing the parts where it's like, I'm now applying this to my style, go forth. That's fine. If you're doing the anatomy, keep it to yourself. You teach us how to draw an owl? Yeah. You draw some circles, and then you draw the rest of the owl. I feel like I might actually have an owl on here. I drew an owl for someone at some point. Yeah, I do have an owl that I drew. There you go. Draw the rest of the owl. Now draw the rest of the owl. I have to get this child off my screen. Drawn owls are okay, real ones are not? Why not? I like owls. I think Squirrely's getting upset about the alarm now too. And you know what? I don't blame her. I'm bothered. I'm upset about this timer going off. I don't blame her. You like owls, but then you call owls frogs? Those are frogs. Those are frogs. And you can't convince me otherwise. They're frogs. Yeah, the birds are going crazy. What's wrong with them? They look like owls, though? No, they don't. They look like frogs. They look like frogs. And Prince Charming and Ravis look the same. They do look alike. I don't know why you're blind. They do look alike. I'm sorry you're blind. Maybe you should get some glasses. Go see a doctor. You literally have glasses? You need to get your prescription checked. Any plans for this afternoon? Play game? Play game? Probably. Game, snack, and I almost said snap. It's nap. What have you streamed? Game? No. I'm gonna play more Eastward. Snapping someone out of existence? Yeah, you guys. What if I hit end stream right then? What if I hit end stream right at that exact moment? How funny would that have been? That would have been so funny. That would have been so funny. Can't end until you say goodbye. I've done it before. I've done it before. Well, you guys were like, bet you won't end the stream right now. And then I hit end stream. You guys were like, but Nami! But Nami! Say goodbye! And I do it again! I'd do it again! God, you love us? I love, calling you guys on things more. Here you've changed? You love us now? No, I'd do it again. I would do it again. Absolutely, 100%. Because I personally find it really funny. So, my humor being tickled far outweighs anything else. I would absolutely do it again for a heartbeat. Done. Easy dusted. You know what's funny? I woke up this morning to Lua to Lua messaging me like, so she's like, I accidentally named 2 identical followers after you, and one Nami fell in love with the other Nami and is trying to woo them. I was like, you know what? Who better to love you than yourself? Self-love is important, you know? Gotta love yourself in this world. It was so funny. Like, what are the odds of that happening? That one Nami would be like, man, you know, I really like Nami. I really like Nami. Can you help me? Can you help me woo Nami? Maybe that should be our commentary, you know? Romance yourself. Treat yourself well. Practice some self-love. Be like, you're damn right. I'm pretty cool and cute. I should be nice to myself. Let me take myself out on a date. Do something nice for yourself. Pick something up. Observe your bicep. Like, damn. That's looking pretty nice. That's looking pretty nice. You know what? I think me, myself, and I would love a nice date. Having this lovely dinner. And then you just go and do it, man. Treat yourself, romance yourself, get a burger and turn on a season of Vampire Diaries or True Blood. Harry, is that your concept of romancing yourself? Is Vampire Diaries? True Blood I could partially get behind, because True Blood's kind of a hoot and a holler sometimes. Vampire Diaries, at least with True Blood you get to hear Bill be like, "Suke." And Alexander Skarsgård is there. Vampire Diaries doesn't have that. Vampire Diaries is the gothic Degrassi. Oh my god. Stop being right. Stop being right. That's too true, actually. Weren't they, like, starting to make new Degrassi? Isn't there, like, new Degrassi being made? Maybe choke on water with that? So sorry, you should learn to never drink around me. They were on Netflix? Is it done? Sorry, excited. Is it done? Is it a thing that you can watch, or is it still like a coming soon? '23. I'm gonna forget that it exists by that point. Yeah, no, there's lots of Degrassi. Google says it's HBO Max, not Netflix. I thought it wasn't Netflix. I thought it was HBO Max. 2023 is only 3 months away. That's too long. I could perish tomorrow. We could all perish tomorrow. That's just like a fact. That's just a fact, frankly. Sweet release. God, please. Three seasons? Holy shit. You guys remember when Drake was on Degrassi? No, not Drake Bell. The Music Man Drake. Yeah, a rapper. Yeah. He was on Degrassi. You guys don't know? You don't know that Drake was on Degrassi? You're not aware that Drake was on Degrassi? Some of y'all don't know anything. There he is. There's Drake. Yeah, I would have thought that was a well-known Drake fact. That's where our man started. There's even younger Drake on Degrassi, too. There's even younger Drake on Degrassi. And this supposed to be junior high? I don't remember. I don't know. Oh, shoot. Nene raid. I was gonna raid Nene. Hey, welcome everyone. Hi, Nene. Yeah, Degrassi. I'm teaching people about Degrassi now. I was teaching them about the fact that Drake got started on Degrassi, and people were like, what? Drake? Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Such a thing to tap into? Listen, occasionally Degrassi is... I don't know what I was gonna say with that, but occasionally it is. Occasionally Degrassi exists. Occasionally it is. Yeah. Occasionally. My man's was on 8 seasons of Degrassi? Holy cow. Can't believe this is our Degrassi deep dive now. Degrassi Community School. It was a middle/high school. So you got many years of these kids because of the fact that it was a middle and high school combined. Degrassi, Canada's dark past. I know, right? Degrassi felt like the like really forbidden fruit of young teens programming. Like, whenever I would see Degrassi come out, I'd be like, am I gonna get in trouble for watching this? You know what I'm saying? Like, Degrassi seems like really risque for after school like teen programming. What is it even about? Some kids in a school, and all of them are real, like, they're out here doing drugs and stuff. Oh God. Degrassi went there, huh? That's what put Jimmy in the wheelchair? Huh, okay. So, like, Skins, you know what? That is a perfect comparison. Degrassi is the original North American Skins. Not the movie. The UK show Skins. This is the North American equivalent of Skins. You're so right. My brain feels like... The thing is, though, I think Degrassi, they were, like, actually in school more often than the people in Skins ever were. So there's that. Because it really focused on the school, considering the school was Degrassi Community School. Meanwhile, Skins was like, these kids are out partying. Woo, yeah! They're going crazy, and they're 14. You're like, hello? Terry, I need you to throw away that take. What is happening there? What are you saying? I always wanted to have my own art style, so I guess this stream might help. We have finished our lecture. Please view the VOD or earlier in the stream if you want the actual helpful art style discussion. Is that Drake on a wheelchair? I'm so sorry that you've come in to see this and what you thought was an art style stream. I'm so sorry that you've come at the tail end where things are weird. Yes, please watch the VOD. I give actual good information earlier in the stream when it was still focused on art style. And then we started talking about Degrassi because we were done teaching. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Drake wasn't originally in the wheelchair in the show. Because after, apparently they had a bang bang pow pow at their school that he ends up in the wheelchair. Maybe abruptly hitting in stream wasn't too bad of an idea after all. I know. I know. Yeah. Perhaps you can't be serious? No, I'm serious. That's how he ends up in the wheelchair. That's why I was like, oh, Degrassi went there, huh? Degrassi went there, huh? I need to write to someone. I need to escape. I need to not have so much of this be left being Degrassi. I was thinking, man, if I leave it a shorter stream, it'll appeal to people to watch as a VOD with our excellent clickbait. And now here I am talking about Degrassi. Who's online? A Chiki-chan. There's also Panko. Can't remember how we got here. It was Terry's fault. Terry's fault. My sister used to love Degrassi. I remember Jake getting put in a wheelchair pretty vividly. It's not a madness of my own making. It's Terry's fault. Terry definitely brought up Degrassi. I didn't think about Degrassi until Terry said something. Yeah, no, there's no one in Kawaii streaming for another 3 hours. I could just put y'all in a waiting room for 3 hours. Yeah, and then it ended and raided us. Go back to loving yourself. That's how we got on the topic of Degrassi, please. You know what? I should love myself by ending stream and making lunch, because my tumbly's rumbling. My tumbly's rumbling. And I got stuff to make really good mac and cheese. I'm gonna make some mac and cheese and a chicken tender. Thought that vibe was the end of stream. Have you been gone? You did. I'll make some mac and cheese and chicken tenders. I got 3 types of cheese for my mac and cheese, boys. I got sharp cheddar, I got mild cheddar, and I got pepper jack. I'm gonna fuck up some mac and cheese, man. The good shit. And the way that I make mine, I actually cook the noodles. I cook the noodles in a broth, like a chicken broth, so you get extra flavor instead of like it just being water. You like really imbue a lot of flavor into your noodles by cooking it in a broth. It's so good. Yeah, yeah. And I'm out of cream cheese. I was supposed to buy cream cheese at the store for it, but the one that I usually make has cream cheese and just a splash of milk instead of making a bechamel. But I'm out of cream cheese, so I think I'm gonna substitute cream cheese with a little bit of sour cream. It'll have some nice tang to it. But it should still work. It just might be a bit looser. But it's gonna be yummy. Since you mentioned that the other day, I tried it and it's goated. So good. Heavy cream, not the same. I'll be using a splash of heavy cream too because I'm also out of milk and I forgot to get milk. I was like, I got all this stuff for my mac and cheese. Didn't get cream cheese. Didn't get milk. This is what happens when you go to the store without a shopping list, because the reason that you went to the store was just because you wanted to make butter. Like, that was my whole purpose in going to the store yesterday, was I wanted to make butter. And so the rest of what I grabbed was just sort of like, I'll get this too. I made my butter. So there's that. For anyone that's not on Twitter, I made butter yesterday. See? I made butter. He's got the mac. Yeah, I have the noodles. I have the noodles. Don't worry. I got a 2-pound thing of elbow noodles. Yeah, the birds are chatty. They're awful creatures. But yeah, I forgot the cream cheese. Butter on top of that cast just seems right for your streams. It wasn't that I almost got the butter wet, it's that I almost kept pouring out the buttermilk into the sink because I was washing dishes after making the butter. And for whatever reason, my brain was like, I'm gonna put my bowl of buttermilk next to the sink while I wash these dishes, so that when I transfer it to the container that I'm gonna store it in, Oh shit, I could do that instead of heavy cream. I could do a splash of buttermilk. Ooh, it might be real tangy though. I don't know. Anyways, I was like, I'll have it right next to the sink so that whenever I transfer it to the storage container that I'm gonna put it in, I'll have the bowl that it was in right by the sink so I can wash it right there. And so my brain kept wanting to reach for the buttermilk bowl instead of the bowls that were literally inside of the sink. My hand kept being like, buttermilk bowl. And I had to be like, no, not buttermilk bowl. Not buttermilk bowl. Don't do it. Don't do the buttermilk bowl. It's also like when you paint and you have like your paint water and then you have like your actual drinking cup, and even though you could have them in very different cups, your brain, anytime you go to drink, because you're thinking like don't grab it, your hand always wants to go to your paint water instead of your actual drinking cup, so that you almost drink paint water. You guys know how that is. When you almost drink your paint water. I've never actually drank my paint water, but I've been close to it many times. Done that with paint water in a buddy's spit cup. Terry, that sounds so horrifying. I hate that. I hate that. Oh my god, I'm getting really hungry. Okay, we're gonna end the stream. We're gonna end the stream because I'm getting so hungry now. Hold on. I just wanna, real quick. Butter Drake. How best? What layer style's best? There we go, Butter Drake. Anyway. Thank you all so much for coming today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day or night, wherever you are. I hope the information pre-Degrassi talk was helpful. I hope my squirrel stops yelling at me so I can end the stream. Scheduled time is tomorrow, and I am off. I love you all so much. Enjoy sitting in a waiting room for 2 hours and 35 minutes. Okay. Bye.